All right, human rights activist and United Nations Messenger of Peace Malala Yousafzai will meet with the Canadian Prime Minister and address the country's parliament today. She became the youngest Nobel Peace Prize winner after surviving a Taliban assassination attack. Yousafzai wrote a best-selling book. The audio version won a Grammy Award. And over the next 6 months, she'll advocate for the education of women and girls by visiting Latin America, the Middle East, North America, Europe, and Africa on what she's calling her girl power trip. At the same time, the 19-year-old is trying to figure out her college plans for the fall. And we talked to her at the UN about her global mission of education, preventing war, and her message to President Trump. Well, welcome. We're going to sit down right here.
The UN rarely shuts down the General Assembly Hall for a television interview. But for Malala Yousafzai, the world body made an exception. The survivor of a 2012 Taliban attack has demonstrated comfort on the global stage, addressing the most complex issues.
President Trump twice tried to issue an immigration ban or a travel ban on refugees from majority Muslim countries. What message do you think that sent?
Well, when President banned Muslim majority countries, that was really disappointing, and I was deeply hurt because I'm a Muslim, and to me it just seemed like directly blaming Muslims, and that is not a solution. That is just making an excuse and hiding from the real problems. I think he needs to understand that you need to meet the people. You need to see the refugee people.
Malala has done just that, spending her 19th birthday with Somalian refugees in Kenya. She also visited a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan.
They are dying, whether they're in Syria or any other country. They're dying, they're being killed, and if you don't open the doors, if you don't welcome them, they would be killed. So it's important that he understands that these people are in need. And I have seen them. I have went to refugee camp, and I think he needs to go to these refugee camps.
You think President Trump needs to go to a refugee camp?
I definitely agree with that. President Donald Trump needs to go and see refugee children. He needs to go and visit the refugee camps. He needs to know what a real life is like in a refugee camp.
We saw the horrifying images of the chemical attack in Syria, and the U.S. later bombed a Syrian air base in what the White House called a proportional response. Did you see those pictures?
It is shocking what's happening in Syria, but we need to remember that this happens each and every day, whether that's through chemical weapon or any other weapon. The number of people who have been killed is in hundreds and thousands, and it has been happening for more than 5 to 6 years. And the world is being silent, and I think we need to remind our leaders that this is a serious issue. We need to think ahead. We need to think about preventing wars from starting as well, and I think for that, investment in education is the key, investing especially in the education of women and girls.
There's a direct relationship between illiteracy and terrorism.
With education comes questioning, with education comes critical thinking, with education comes more opportunities. People go forward, people see in the world from a different perspective.
But Malala, there are 130 million girls who do not have access to school.
It is shocking that 130 million girls are not in school, and when we talk about going forward and achieving developments, it is not possible without empowering these 130 million girls. But I just wonder, why do these leaders not see this?
Malala's advocacy started with a blog for the BBC. She spoke out about the Taliban's suppression of girls in Pakistan. It made her a target 4.5 years ago when Taliban militants shot her in the head on her school bus.
Bullets hit me just right here.
We first spoke with her a year later.
The man who targeted you is now the head of the Taliban. Does that scare you?
I'm not scared of the Taliban at all. I might be afraid of ghosts and dragons and those things, but I'm not afraid of the Taliban.
Her bravery earned her the Nobel Peace Prize in 2014.
It is an enormous pleasure.
And earlier this week, the United Nations Secretary General bestowed his highest honor.
I am proud to designate you the youngest ever United Nations Messenger of Peace with a special focus on girls' education.
Placing her among an elite group of public figures raising awareness on behalf of the UN. For Malala, it was an emotional return.
I had a historic moment here when I spoke at the UN and I gave my speech after the attack, and it was my first kind of appearance.
One child, one teacher, one book, and one pen can change the world.
She's still working to change the world by leading the way.
That is my campaign, to make sure that the girls' voices are heard.
Yesterday, she spoke at a school in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. It's a farming community of 60,000 with an outsized population of resettled refugees.
Why did you want to visit Lancaster, Pennsylvania?
To the world sometimes, especially right now due to the political situation, people have a different image of America right now, a bit unwelcoming image.
They call Lancaster America's refugee capital.
Yes, and I think Lancaster, being American refugee capital, is giving a very positive message to the world about American people. So I'm hopeful that people will follow the city.
Back in her adopted home in the UK, Malala is finishing up her final exams. She tells us she'd like to attend the alma mater of her hero, Benazir Bhutto, Pakistan's first female prime minister.
So I had an interview for Oxford, and it was the hardest interview, the hardest.
Of your life?
It was.
Why?
Because they ask you really hard questions.
I find it hard to believe that anything's hard for you, Malala.
No, but it's different. It's not a TV interview. It's a different interview. Ask you hard questions.
Yeah. A lot of academic questions.
Academic questions, yeah.
Yeah. But you would like to go to Oxford?
If I get the grades.
Yeah, if you get the grades.
Yeah.
But you've said you would like to be prime minister one day.
I did say, but I'm not sure. Let's see. Let's see what time tells. Yeah.
You're dialing back on that?
I'm not sure. It's just a bit too much.
A bit too much?
Yeah. I'm going to be focused on my university now.
My university, focused on my... You know, she has not given an interview in a couple of years, a television interview. I interviewed her 3.5 years ago. She just doesn't do interviews, and yet she is the most famous teenager in the world.
It's amazing that she's 19 years old. You think about how much she's accomplished at this young age. What she has in store is just unbelievable.
Welcomed by world leaders, with the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, other world leaders. She had met in the Oval Office with President Obama. So she's going to focus on getting into Oxford. She said she's got to get 3 A's on her final exams. But it's hard to believe they wouldn't let her in.
Who's not going to let Malala
Yousafzai?
Yeah, exactly.
And if not, I'm sure Harvard and Stanford have a place
exactly.
waiting for her. We have more from Malala's interview on our CBS This Morning podcast. Find out how she plans to use her new UN honor to achieve her goals all around the world. Just search for CBS This Morning on iTunes or Apple's podcast app.